one of the things we mentioned earlier was color assigning, and that's something that I want to take a moment to go over with you, is how to assign the colors. If you're coming from a home embroidery machine, you're used to an embroidery design, breaking down the different color segments of your design, and you actually having all of your spools of thread lined up. So that means that after one color stitches, you place the next color on, rethread the machine, and continue doing your embroidery. Well, you noticed earlier in the video when we were stitching out our design, we had to tell the machine where to place our colors, and the machine knew to stitch out that color, trim the thread, and moved on to the next color. So it doesn't stop unless you tell the machine to stop. So because that's a little different process, we want to make sure that you have the information and the knowledge of how you can get the color assigned the best way for your project. So we're going to walk you through again how the color memory works on the machine, show you some of those other keys and icons that we have that may make your color assigning easier, and then we're even going to explore manual color sequence, which is a feature that is part of the Valiant. So we're going to give you a lesson on color assigning and let you decide what's the best method for color assigning for the type of embroidery that you do. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go to our exclusives, and I want to go to Novelty. And there's this large butterfly design that I like to use. It's bright and colorful. And I can go ahead and touch Set to bring that design in. Now, you'll notice again that my frame display is showing as a 5x7. So if I want to go any further, I have to go ahead and adjust my carriage, or the frame holder on my carriage. So I'm just going to quickly loosen this screw and stretch out my frame holder. Okay, that way I just know it's going to fit on my screen and I'm not going to run into any issues. So now you can see that 5x7 box is gone. So now I am free to edit. So I don't need to make any changes with my size, but I could go in if I needed to and then make any color adjustments here using that color palette key. So that's one way that I could make adjustments to my colors. And you can see here the list of the colors and how they're going to stitch out. When I touch OK, that's just going to close me out of that box. And then I can touch Edit End. And again, I could do any other additional editing, but I want to touch Embroidery. And when I touch Embroidery, again, the machine is going to tell me change the threads and click the Start button. You'll notice here that it has already assigned some of my colors to the different needles. So earlier in the video, we stitched out that letter B with the two little designs around it. The colors we used for that were Harvest Gold, Reddish Brown, Tangerine, and White. So those were already assigned to needles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, this design has Harvest Gold in it. That's the first color of the design. So the machine knows I used Harvest Gold in my last design. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to needle 1. Now, it also used Tangerine, so down here, which is my 5th color, is Tangerine. So it knew I used Tangerine in my previous design, and it went ahead and assigned that to needle 3. So again, the machine is going to take any colors that you used from a previous design, and it's going to assign the color to that needle. So you don't have to go in and change the thread for that specific needle. Then it will take any colors that are new that it didn't have previously assigned, and it will assign them to the other needles on your machine. It will place it somewhere. So it's trying to do its best to save you the time of having to rethread the machine. So if I was going to stitch this out, I would need to now place these colors on needle 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 and thread those needles accordingly with those different colors of thread. Now I'm going to go ahead and touch OK, and I want to show you a few other icons on the screen. So down here at the bottom, if I touch Return, that will take me back to my embroidery settings page. I have this icon here, which will let me stitch my entire design in one color. It's called Monochromatic Sewing. So if I touch this key, you'll notice that it will have assigned my color to needle 4. Now I can go in and adjust that, but it's sewing everything in one color. So you may be wondering why this assigned it to needle 4. Well, if you look over here to the right, you'll notice that I have needle 4 selected. That was the last color that's stitched out on my previous design. So that is the needle that is currently selected on the machine. But if I didn't want to stitch that all in white, I wanted to use one of the other colors on my spool stand, I could just easily touch that color, and then you'll be able to see what it will look like in that color. Okay? So if I want to turn that off completely, I can just unselect that spool, and now it's turned off the monochromatic, and all my previous color assigning has come back. Okay. The key to the right of that is your switch spool key. You'll see it has two spools of thread with arrows pointing next to each other. So there may be an instance when you're doing embroidery where it may call for a specific color. So say it's calling for harvest gold. We'll say that I have a color of thread that is close enough to harvest gold that I used on a previous design, but maybe it was just called yellow. I can come in here and switch a spool of thread so that it switches that color to a different needle, assigns it to a different needle. By touching this key here, I could say, I want harvest gold to be on, say my yellow color was on needle 10, or say my yellow color is on this spool 8. It just depends on what you have your machine thread it for. I could touch spool 8, then I can touch this icon here and watch and see how those colors change. So they've changed them, so now my harvest gold is assigned to needle 8, and then I can touch OK. So now when I come back here, these two have switched the colors, but most importantly is to the right of my harvest gold, I now have needle 8. So it's really important, this can sometimes get confusing, but it's really important to verify what needle each of your colors is going to pull from by checking the number next to the spool of thread. So one of the important things about the Valiant is you may have noticed that it's all about the sequencing of your design. So you'll notice here it's got harvest gold and it's got the needle number that it's going to pull the thread from. And it's going to keep doing that as I go down to each of the individual color segments of my design. So the most important thing is that you are pulling the correct color thread for your project from the correct needle. So one of the things that the machine will tell you, harvest gold, wisteria violet, deep rose. If you knew you wanted to use a different color, just like you may have done on a previous single needle embroidery machine, you would lay out the colors of the thread that you want to use. The machine doesn't necessarily know that you have yellow up there. It's more concerned about what needle I'm pulling that color thread from. So if I decide that, you know what, I really don't care, I want the background on my butterfly pink, I don't have to tell the machine it's pink as long as I know that needle 8 has a pink color thread up on it. So it's more important to make sure, again, that these are corresponding to the thread colors that you want for your project up on the spool stand. Now, if I wanted to go through and see each of those sections, if I touch this plus minus needle key, so you can see here that I have a preview window showing me the part of the design for that color. Now I can just easily touch on the Valiant and I can see that the next color is going to be this wisteria violet, which is going to be the center part. I can also touch right here on my bar, my embroidery progress bar, and touch to another color. So I have several ways to navigate, but this is a way that I can preview through my design and see exactly what color and what part of the design is going to be stitched out by that color. And the machine's going to move around as I do that. Then I can make sure that I have the correct corresponding colors up on my spool stand along with the needles. Now, if you're in here and you're walking through your design, it's very important that you touch this 0 with the needle, and that will bring you back to the beginning of your embroidery design. So sometimes if you come in here and do that and are in the middle of the design, the machine thinks that you've wanted to advance to that point in your design. So that's a really quick way to do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and touch OK. So there may be another time where you want to change the color of a design just for one stitch out of a design. So I always use the example of if I'm doing a baby gift and I'm doing a little teddy bear who has a bow around the neck, and I'm doing 4 girl gifts and I'm doing 1 boy gift. Instead of having to go in and reassign or do anything like that with my color of my bow, I can come in and use this magic wand key. And the magic wand key allows me to, when I select that key, I can go to a specific section of my design. I can select whichever part I want. So I'm just going to use this harvest gold, this first section of my design, so you can kind of get an idea. If I have that color and I decide, you know what, for one design, I just want to quickly change my color, I can come in here and can assign that to any different needle. You'll see now it's saying needle 10 and it gives me an image of a magic wand. So what that means is that once I complete this embroidery and I'm done stitching out my design, that magic wand is going to poof, go away, and my needle's going to assign it back to needle number 8. So it's just a temporary way that you can override the needle selection for a specific color. So another great example for using the magic wand is, say you're stitching out several different Christmas stockings and you're using the built-in fonts. So they're going to come in and it's the color black. Well, you don't want to stitch them out in black. You want to stitch them out in red or green. You could easily use the magic wand and assign and pick a specific color that would have the color red or the color green on it. And then once it is done stitching, it's going to go back to assigning it to the needle that has black assigned to it. So it's just a quick way in one pass to override the color assigning of your specific design. So that's a really quick, fun, easy way. And you can select multiple different colors and override them. So for example, here I've selected number 10. If I came down here and say for the orange, I also want to use number 10, I could do that as well. So that's another way too, that if you have two colors that are similar and you want to pull them from the same spool of thread. So if I had two shades of pink, but I want to use the same spool of thread for them, I could come in here and select both colors and assign them to a specific needle. Okay, so that's a really easy, quick way to kind of override the color assigning on the machine. So now if I'm done with that, I can go ahead and touch OK. Another thing, if I wanted to remove them, really easy to remove them, I just unselect that color and touch reset, and it will clear out any of that magic wand that I selected. Touch OK, and now I'm back to my screen. So there's a few other icons down here that I just want to touch on while we're in this page. So this plus minus spool, we went to that a little earlier. So this is where you would go when say your bobbin runs out. When your bobbin would run out on the machine, it will stop and give you a message and tell you to check your upper or lower thread or your bobbin thread. So if your bobbin, you need to place a new bobbin in the machine, you want to go back maybe 10, 20 stitches. You can easily do that here by just using these minus keys and backing up a few stitches. You also can advance through your design. So you can advance like we showed you earlier by either using the progress bar or touching a specific color segment to jump to that part of your design. But on the Valiant, we have a new key that's available as well. So if I touch this keypad here, this allows me to actually come back and get to a specific stitch on my design. So there may be a point in time where, say you're sewing out lace and you need to come back to a specific point on your design. These machines can stitch up to 500,000 stitches in a design. So if something was all one color, you may want to come in and be able to advance by a specific stitch number. So it's a really nice convenience feature on the machine. So if I wanted to advance to halfway through my design here, I've got roughly 34,000 stitches. I can type in 15,000 and touch set. And you'll see now that it moved to that exact stitch and it's showing me on my progress bar where that stitch is. Then if I knew, oh, I'm almost done with my other color, I could select the next color. So again, lots of ways to navigate through the stitches on the machine. I'm going to touch OK to come out here. Now, one of the other things too to mention with the plus minus spool is if you are in and doing embroidery, and say for some reason the electricity shuts off in your home, or even if you just want to go to bed and you want to turn the machine off in the middle of doing embroidery, on the Valiant, you can just turn the machine off, and when you turn the machine back on, it has what we call our auto resume function. So the machine will prompt you and say, hey, you were in the middle of doing embroidery. Do you want to resume back to the place that you were previously? You can touch OK, and it will take you right back to that last stitch that you were working on. You could go back and go back a few stitches if you wanted to, or just let the embroidery pick up where it left off. So that's a great thing. You don't have to worry about getting back to that exact point because the machine will do that for you. So I'm going to touch OK. And then I want to just talk real quickly too. You'll notice that you have some speed adjustments on the machine. And this is kind of personal preference. The Valiant will stitch up to 1,000 stitches per minute. That's the default on the machine. So it's designed to do embroidering. It's designed to do it fast so that you can get your jobs done. Now, if I wanted to reduce my speed for any reason, I can toggle through and see that I can go down to 400 stitches per minute. So I've got quite a range of speeds. Now, if you do the ball cap or use our cap frame, the machine will automatically reduce the speed for you. That's an appropriate speed for doing ball caps. So again, personal preference, you can leave it at whatever speed works for you. Okay, so I want to show you one more way that you can assign color on the Baby Lock Valiant. I'm going to go ahead and touch return and say OK. And then I want to go to my settings page. If I go select this page right here with the corner turned down, and I'm going to advance to page 5. And you're going to see here there's an option called Manual Color Sequence. Right now that's turned off. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Then I can go ahead and say OK to exit out of my settings pages. Now you may notice in the top left-hand corner of my design page, I now have a ghost image that looked like that manual color sequence. So when you turn that on, you get a visual prompt on the screen to let you know that that feature is turned on the machine. Now you may notice that here there's a new icon. So before we had that pause key, that's no longer there. Now we have what we call our manual color sequence key right here. If I touch embroidery, you'll notice I no longer have switch spools. That icon is gone as well. Okay, so I'm going to touch return to go back to this screen. When manual color sequence is turned on, everything that we've taught you so far about letting the machine assign the colors in the color memory is kind of gone on the wayside. What manual color sequence allows you to do is for you to manually assign the color of each of the part of your design to a specific needle. So when you select this key here, you'll notice that it has assigned a needle to each of my color sections. And it's done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just in sequence. It's assigned it across the needles. So I have the option now to manually go in and assign the colors to the specific needles that I want to use. So I can look at what colors are up on my spool stand, and I can select Harvest Gold, and this obviously put it on 1 because it's just the first color, which I'm fine with. But if I wanted to say Wisteria Violet and select that color, I could come over and select any of my 10 needles and assign the color to that needle. Now I can come down to Deep Rose. If I had a pink color on 7, I could select that color. Then I could come down to Vermilion, and again, if I want to use the same pink color, I could select needle number 7. So I'm just manually going through and picking the color that's on a specific needle and manually assigning my colors. So I'm overriding any of the color memory on the machine. I'm just telling it exactly where I want the thread color to go. To give you a good visual, you can see that I have brown, the color brown thread threaded on needle number 2. If I come down here where it says reddish brown, it's assigning it to needle 7. I can just manually tell it to go to needle 2 when it gets to that color of my design. And then I could do the same thing for magenta. I could select another spool that would have a magenta color on it. And then I could touch OK. And again, if the color isn't the color that's part of the design, doesn't matter because you're manually telling it where you want it to go. Now when I touch embroidery, it is only going to show me over on the right-hand side the needles that have some color assigned to it. And then again, down here on the right, next to each of my color sections, it's going to show me the appropriate needle or the needle that I assigned on the right. So this is where you can verify that you have all the correct colors that you wanted, that you've manually selected. So you'll notice that you still have your monochromatic sewing and you still have that magic wand. So neither of those functions have gone away. They still will work with manual color sequence. So you may be wondering, when would you use one over the other? There's sometimes if I'm doing an embroidery, say I'm doing a jumbo hoop design, I will turn off the manual color sequence because I want the machine to have the color memory and have that saved. So when I sew a half of my embroidery design and use the camera and rotate my hoop, it will automatically find those colors for the second half of my design. So that's when you're doing a specialty hoop or jumbo hoop design with using the camera. So that would be a time where I would turn manual color sequence off. Again, it's just personal preference. I use it a lot because I'll do a lot of single color embroidery. And that way I don't necessarily need to worry about what the color of my design is saying. I can just manually tell it which spool to go to and use the color of thread that's on that specific needle. So personal preference, lots of choices and options. Finding the one that works best for you is what's really important in being able to get the most out of the Baby Lock Valiant.